In the annals of history, some names are etched in infamy, whispered with fear and loathing. Among them, few resonated with such chilling dread as Gu Yangchen. He was not merely a villain. He was the architect of an era of despair, a loyal, ruthless servant to the heavenly demon, whose reign plunged the world into an abyss of suffering. His hands, once instruments of his master's cruel will, were stained with the blood of countless innocents, his heart a fortress of ice, impervious to the pleas of the downtrodden. He stood at the precipice of power, a general in an army of darkness, believing in the righteousness of his cause, or perhaps simply too far gone to believe in anything else. But even the most hardened hearts, when faced with the ultimate consequence of their actions, can find themselves consumed by a regret so profound, it shatters the very foundations of their being. For years, he had been the unwavering blade of the heavenly demon, a force of destruction that swept across the land, crushing all who dared to oppose. He witnessed horrors, perpetrated atrocities, all in the name of a twisted loyalty. He was feared, reviled, and utterly alone. His power grew, but so too did the emptiness within him. He believed he was building a new world, a world free from the hypocrisy and weakness he despised. But what he built was a monument to suffering, a kingdom of ashes where hope had long since withered and died. And then the end came, not with a bang, but with a whimper. The heavenly demon, his master, his god, fell, vanquished by the very forces Gu Yangchen had sought to eradicate. And in the aftermath, amidst the rubble of his shattered world, Gu Yangchen found himself a prisoner. His captor? Siola, the heroine, the beacon of light he had so vehemently fought against. She stood before him, not with triumph, but with a desperate plea for answers, a yearning to understand the madness that had consumed their world. And in that moment, stripped of his power, his purpose, and his master, a flicker of something long dormant ignited within him: regret. A searing, agonizing regret that tore through his soul, exposing the raw, festering wounds of his past. He answered her questions, not out of defiance, but out of a desperate, fleeting hope for understanding. And in doing so, he triggered a curse, a failsafe designed to prevent any betrayal. His life, a tapestry woven with threads of darkness, was abruptly severed. He felt the cold embrace of death, a final, chilling silence. But then, a jolt, a blinding flash of light, and the world, once a desolate wasteland, began to reform, not as it was, but as it once had been. He was no longer the feared general, the villain. He was a boy again, a boy on the cusp of a fateful encounter, a meeting that would forever alter the course of his destiny. He had regressed. The villain had returned to change everything. The cacophony of the marketplace assaulted his senses. The vibrant colors, the smells of street food, the joyous laughter of children. It was a stark, almost painful contrast to the desolate landscapes of his recent past. He was younger, much younger. His hands, once calloused from years of wielding a blade, were now soft, unblemished. This was not a dream. This was real. He had truly regressed. The impossible had happened. The weight of his past, the countless lives he had ruined, the world he had helped destroy, it all crashed down upon him with renewed force. But this time, it was accompanied by a flicker of something else: hope. A fragile, terrifying hope that he could, perhaps, undo some of the damage. His eyes, still accustomed to the shadows of his former life, scanned the familiar faces, the familiar streets. And then he saw her, Siola, so young, so full of an unblemished light that he had once sought to extinguish. The memory of her desperate questions, her unwavering spirit even in the face of his tyranny, echoed in his mind. This was it, the moment of their first meeting. The pivotal point where their paths, once destined for collision, could now diverge. But how? How could he, a villain reborn, change a destiny so deeply ingrained? The initial shock gave way to a surge of adrenaline, a frantic scramble of thoughts. He had lived this life before. He knew the players, the plots, the betrayals. He knew the weaknesses of his enemies and the strengths of his allies, even those who were currently unaware of their future roles. This was not a mere second chance. It was a weapon forged from regret and tempered by foresight. He would not repeat his mistakes. He would not serve the heavenly demon. He would not allow the world to fall into ruin. But to achieve this, he would have to become a different kind of villain. A silent manipulator, a shadow in the background, pulling strings, subtly altering the course of events. His first steps were cautious, almost imperceptible. He moved through the world like a ghost, observing, analyzing, and meticulously planning. He avoided the pitfalls he remembered, sidestepped the traps he knew were laid. He began to gather resources, not through brute force, but through cunning and foresight. A rare herb found in a forgotten corner of the market, a seemingly worthless trinket that held a hidden power. A chance encounter with a minor character who would later become a key player. Each small action was a calculated move in a grand, intricate game. He was playing chess with destiny, and he intended to win. With his future knowledge as his guide, Gu Yangchen wasted no time in cultivating his strength. He sought out the hidden training methods, the forgotten techniques, the shortcuts to power that he had either overlooked or dismissed in his previous life. His body, though young, remembered the movements, the feeling of power surging through his veins. He pushed himself relentlessly, driven by the specter of his past and the burning desire to forge a different future. Each strike, each block, each breath was a testament to his unwavering resolve. He knew that raw power alone would not be enough. He needed knowledge, and he needed it quickly. He delved into ancient texts, deciphered forgotten languages, and sought out reclusive masters, not as a student, but as an equal, a fellow seeker of truth. He absorbed information like a sponge, his mind a vast repository of past experiences, now augmented by newfound wisdom. He was a prodigy, but his genius was born not of innate talent, but of a lifetime of bitter lessons and hard-won knowledge. His first true tests came in the form of minor skirmishes, echoes of the larger conflicts that would soon engulf the world. Bandits, petty tyrants, and misguided zealots. They were mere pawns in the grand scheme of things, but they provided him with an opportunity to hone his skills, to test the limits of his newfound power. He moved with a chilling efficiency, his actions precise and calculated. He didn't seek glory or recognition. He sought only to subtly nudge the scales of destiny, to prevent the small injustices that would inevitably lead to larger catastrophes. He was a ghost in the shadows, a silent guardian, his presence felt but rarely seen. Each successful intervention, each averted disaster, brought a fleeting sense of satisfaction. He was changing things. He was making a difference. But with each alteration, the threads of destiny began to fray, to twist in unforeseen ways. The future he knew was no longer a certainty. It was a shifting, unpredictable landscape. He was playing a dangerous game, and the consequences of his actions, however well-intentioned, were beginning to ripple outwards, creating new challenges, new threats, and new unknowns. The path to redemption was not a straight line. It was a labyrinth of choices, each with its own hidden dangers. Gu Yangchen had meticulously planned, carefully executed, and subtly manipulated the threads of fate. He had averted a major disaster, saved countless lives, and felt, for the first time in a long time, a genuine sense of hope. The city below him, bathed in the soft glow of twilight, seemed to hum with a newfound peace. He had done it. He had changed everything. But as he allowed himself a moment of quiet triumph, a blinding flash erupted on the horizon, a distant explosion that sent a tremor through the very air. It was a power signature he recognized, a force he knew should not exist at this time, in this place. His carefully constructed future, the one he had fought so hard to build, was already unraveling. A new, terrifying threat had emerged, born not of his past, but of his very attempt to change it. The game had just begun, and the rules, it seemed, had been rewritten. What new enemy had he inadvertently awakened? What unforeseen consequences would his actions unleash upon a world he was desperately trying to save? The villain had regressed to change everything, but in doing so, he had stepped into a future far more perilous, far more unpredictable than he could ever have imagined. And his journey, fraught with danger and uncertainty, had only just begun. Join us in Part 2, as Gu Yangchen faces the unseen consequences of his choices and confronts the shadows that now emerge from the shifting sands of destiny. The villain had regressed, not to simply relive his past, but to rewrite it. His every calculated move, every subtle alteration, was a stone dropped into the calm waters of destiny, sending ripples far beyond his immediate sight. The explosion that tore through the twilight sky at the close of our last chapter was not a random act of chaos, but a direct consequence of his interference. A new threat, an unforeseen anomaly, had emerged from the shifting sands of time, a testament to the unpredictable nature of a world unaccustomed to such drastic changes. Gu Yangchen, the master strategist, now faced a future far more volatile, far more dangerous, than the one he had so desperately sought to escape. He had sought to prevent a catastrophe, to steer humanity away from the precipice of ruin. But in doing so, he had inadvertently stirred a hornet's nest, awakened forces that lay dormant in the original timeline. The path to redemption, he was quickly learning, was not a clear, well-trodden road, but a treacherous labyrinth, where every turn presented a new, unexpected challenge. The world, once a familiar stage for his villainy, was now an unpredictable adversary, reacting to his every move with a chaotic energy he had not anticipated. The immediate threat demanded immediate action, but Gu Yangchen knew he could not face it alone. In his past life, he had relied on fear and coercion. Now, he needed trust, loyalty, and genuine alliances. He sought out individuals whose destinies were intertwined with his, individuals he knew possessed the power and influence to aid him, even if they were currently unaware of the grand tapestry he was weaving. His approach was meticulous, his words carefully chosen, leveraging his knowledge of their pasts, their desires, and their hidden vulnerabilities. He offered them not power, but purpose, not servitude, but partnership. One by one, he began to forge these unlikely bonds. A reclusive master, once an enemy, now found himself intrigued by Gu Yangchen's profound understanding of ancient techniques. A cunning merchant, once a rival, now saw an unparalleled opportunity in his strategic foresight. Even Wai Xiola, the heroine who had once vanquished him, found herself drawn to his enigmatic presence, sensing a hidden depth beneath his calm exterior. These were not easy alliances. They were built on a foundation of suspicion and past grievances. But Gu Yangchen, with his unwavering resolve and uncanny ability to predict their reactions, slowly, painstakingly, began to chip away at their defenses, revealing the true potential of their combined strength. With each new ally, his resources grew, his understanding of the altered timeline deepened. He shared his knowledge, not of the future directly, but of forgotten techniques, hidden weaknesses, and strategic advantages. He pushed them beyond their perceived limits, igniting a spark of greatness within them that had remained dormant in the original timeline. Their combined strength was not merely additive, it was exponential. They were becoming a force to be reckoned with, a bulwark against the encroaching shadows that threatened to engulf their world. The anomaly, the unforeseen consequence of Gu Yangchen's meddling, now revealed itself in its terrifying glory. It was a force unlike any he had encountered in his past life, a manifestation of the chaotic energy unleashed by his temporal displacement. This new adversary was not bound by the rules he knew, its motives shrouded in mystery, its power seemingly limitless. Cities fell, armies crumbled, and despair began to spread like a plague. The world, once merely threatened by the heavenly demon, now faced an even more insidious and unpredictable enemy. The first clashes were brutal, a baptism by fire for his nascent alliance. Gu Yangchen, no longer able to rely solely on foresight, was forced to unleash the full extent of his cultivated power. He fought with a ferocity born of desperation, his movements fluid and deadly, his techniques honed to perfection. His allies, inspired by his unwavering resolve, fought alongside him, their combined efforts creating a symphony of destruction against their common foe. These were not easy victories, they were hard-won, each one a testament to their growing strength and the deepening bonds between them. But with each victory came a deeper understanding of the enemy, a chilling realization of the true scale of the threat. The chaos he had unleashed was not easily contained. It adapted, it evolved, and it struck where he least expected it. He found himself making difficult choices, sacrificing resources, and pushing his allies to their breaking points. The weight of his past, the burden of his knowledge, pressed down upon him, reminding him that every decision, every action, carried a heavy price. As the battles raged, Gu Yangchen delved deeper into the mysteries of his regression, seeking answers, seeking a way to understand the forces at play. And then he found it. A hidden truth, a chilling revelation that shattered his preconceived notions and exposed the true nature of his predicament. The regression was not a random act of fate, nor was it a simple second chance. It was something far more complex, far more insidious. A grand design, perhaps, or a cruel twist of cosmic irony. The enemy he faced was not merely a consequence of his actions. It was intrinsically linked to the very fabric of his existence, a shadow born from the light of his second chance. The truth, when it finally revealed itself, was a bitter pill to swallow. The explosion, the new enemy, the very act of his regression, it was all part of a larger, more intricate design. Gu Yangchen was not merely a player in this game of destiny. He was a pawn, manipulated by a force far beyond his comprehension. And now, that force, the true architect of his fate, stood before him, not as a physical adversary, but as a chilling, ethereal presence, its words echoing with a cosmic indifference. The villain had regressed, believing he was seizing a second chance, a desperate opportunity to rewrite a history stained with blood and regret. But the threads of destiny, he discovered, were not his to command. They were puppet strings, manipulated by an unseen hand, an architect of fate whose grand design had cast him not as a savior, but as a pawn in a cosmic game. The revelation at the close of our last chapter shattered his illusions, exposing the terrifying truth. His regression, his struggles, his very existence, were all part of a larger, more sinister plan. The enemy he faced was not merely a consequence of his actions, but the very force that had granted him this twisted second chance. The weight of this knowledge pressed down upon Gu Yangchen, a crushing burden that threatened to extinguish the fragile flame of hope he had so carefully nurtured. His allies, forged in the crucible of shared battles and newfound trust, looked to him for answers, for leadership. But how could he lead them when he himself was lost in a labyrinth of deceit? The path to redemption, once a beacon in the darkness, now seemed like a cruel mirage, a carefully crafted illusion designed to lead him to an unknown, perhaps even more devastating, end. The gathering storm was no longer a distant threat. It was a maelstrom, and he stood at its very eye. Despite the crushing weight of the revelation, Gu Yangchen's spirit, tempered by a lifetime of conflict and regret, refused to break. He could not succumb to despair, not when so many lives, so many futures, depended on him. He gathered his closest allies, the bonds of their camaraderie, now his greatest strength. He did not burden them with the full, terrifying truth of their manipulated destiny, not yet. Instead, he painted a picture of a formidable enemy, a gathering darkness that threatened to consume everything they held dear. He spoke of sacrifice, of unwavering resolve, of the desperate need to fight, not just for survival, but for the very soul of their world. But before he could face the architect of his fate, Gu Yangchen knew he had to confront the demons of his own past. The sins he had committed in his previous life, the lives he had destroyed, the suffering he had inflicted, they were not mere memories. They were chains that bound him, anchors that threatened to drag him back into the abyss. He sought out those he had wronged, not to erase his guilt, but to acknowledge it, to offer what little solace he could. These were not easy encounters. They were filled with pain, with anger, with the bitter taste of unforgiveness. But with each confrontation, with each heartfelt apology, a small piece of the burden lifted, replaced by a flicker of something akin to peace. His personal demons confronted, if not entirely vanquished, Gu Yangchen turned his attention to the monumental task before them. The architect of fate was a master manipulator, its plans intricate and far-reaching. To counter such an enemy, they needed more than just brute force. They needed a strategy as cunning, as audacious as their adversary. He laid out his plans, a complex tapestry of feints, deceptions, and calculated risks. His allies, their faith in him now absolute, listened intently, their own expertise and insights shaping the strategy, transforming it from a desperate gamble into a viable path to victory. The storm finally broke, unleashing a torrent of violence and destruction upon the world. The architect of fate, its patience wearing thin, moved its pieces with ruthless efficiency, plunging entire regions into chaos. Armies clashed on blood-soaked battlefields. Ancient cities crumbled under the weight of unimaginable power, and the very air crackled with the energy of cataclysmic spells. Gu Yangchen and his allies found themselves at the heart of this maelstrom, a desperate line of defense against an overwhelming tide of darkness. They fought with the courage of lions, their every action a testament to their unwavering resolve. In the crucible of war, heroes were forged. Gu Yangchen, no longer the villain of his past, fought with a righteous fury, his power a beacon of hope amidst the encroaching despair. His allies, each a formidable warrior in their own right, stood beside him, their loyalty unwavering, their courage unyielding. They performed feats of incredible bravery, turning the tide of battles, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. But these victories came at a heavy price. Lives were lost, sacrifices were made, and the emotional scars of war began to etch themselves onto their souls. The price of hope, they were learning, was often paid in blood and tears. And then came the moment that would forever define their struggle. A critical juncture in a pivotal battle, where the fate of their entire campaign hung precariously in the balance. Gu Yangchen, the master strategist, found himself faced with an impossible choice, a decision that would force him to sacrifice something precious, something irreplaceable, for the greater good. The weight of command, the burden of leadership, pressed down upon him, a crushing reminder that even in a world of magic and monsters, the most difficult battles were often fought within the confines of one's own heart. The sacrifice was made, the battle was won, but the victory felt hollow, tainted by the bitter taste of loss. A vital stronghold, a beacon of their resistance, lay in ruins. A beloved companion, a brother in arms, was gone, their light extinguished in the unforgiving flames of war. The architect of fate, though momentarily thwarted, had struck a devastating blow, shattering their shield, shaking their resolve. Despair, a cold and insidious serpent, began to coil around their hearts, whispering insidious doubts, tempting them to surrender. Gu Yangchen stood amidst the ashes of their shattered hopes, the weight of their losses a crushing burden upon his soul. He had faced death, confronted his past, and manipulated destiny itself. But this was a pain unlike any he had ever known. Yet, as he looked upon the faces of his remaining allies, their eyes reflecting a mixture of grief and unwavering loyalty, he knew he could not falter. Their shield may have been shattered, but their will, his will, remained unbroken. The architect of fate had underestimated him, underestimated the power of a villain who had tasted the bitterness of regret, and now fought with the ferocity of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The final confrontation was drawing near, and Gu Yangchen, the villain reborn, would meet it not with fear, but with a cold, unyielding resolve. The game was far from over. What new strategies will Gu Yangchen devise in the face of such devastating loss? Can he rally his remaining forces for one final, desperate stand against an enemy that seems to control their very destiny? And what ultimate sacrifice will be required to break free from the architect of fate's manipulative grasp? The answers lie in this final part. The echoes of despair still lingered, a haunting symphony of loss and sacrifice. The architect of fate had dealt a devastating blow, shattering their defenses, claiming precious lives, and pushing Gu Yangchen and his allies to the very brink of annihilation. Hope, once a flickering flame, now seemed a distant memory, almost extinguished by the overwhelming darkness. Yet, even in the face of such profound devastation, a spark remained. A defiant ember in the heart of Gu Yangchen, the villain who had regressed, who had tasted the bitter ashes of regret, and who now, more than ever, refused to yield. Their shield may have been shattered, but their will, his will, remained unbroken. This was not the end. It was the beginning of their final, desperate stand. He had walked a long and arduous path, from the depths of villainy to the precipice of heroism. He had sought to rewrite his past, to atone for his sins, only to discover that destiny was a far more intricate and manipulative force than he had ever imagined. But with each setback, with each loss, his resolve had only hardened. The architect of fate had underestimated the power of a soul forged in the fires of regret, a mind sharpened by foresight, and a heart now beating not just for himself, but for the countless lives he had sworn to protect. The final act was upon them, and Gu Yangchen, the villain reborn, would face it with an unwavering spirit, ready to pay any price for true redemption. From the ashes of their defeat, a new strategy emerged, born of desperation and fueled by an unyielding will. Gu Yangchen, his voice hoarse but firm, addressed his remaining allies. He spoke not of victory, but of defiance, not of triumph, but of survival. He reminded them of their shared purpose, of the world they fought to save, of the sacrifices already made. His words were a balm to their wounded spirits, a spark that reignited the flames of their courage. They were few, but they were united, their resolve hardened by adversity, their hearts beating as one. The stage was set for the ultimate confrontation. The architect of fate, confident in its impending victory, unleashed its full might, a torrent of destruction aimed at crushing the last vestiges of resistance. But Gu Yangshan and his allies were ready. They stood as a bulwark against the encroaching darkness, their combined strength a testament to their unwavering spirit. This was not just a battle for survival. It was a battle for the very soul of their world, a clash between free will and predetermined destiny. The final battle erupted, a cataclysmic symphony of steel and spirit. Gu Yangshan, now fully embracing his role as the world's last hope, moved with a grace and power that defied comprehension. He unleashed techniques honed over 2 lifetimes, his every action a calculated strike against the architect of fate's intricate design. His allies, fighting with a ferocity born of desperation, stood shoulder to shoulder, their combined abilities weaving a tapestry of light against the encroaching shadows. The ground trembled, the skies roared, and the very fabric of reality seemed to tear under the immense power unleashed. The architect of fate, a being of immense power and chilling indifference, met Gu Yangshan's defiance with a cold, calculated fury. It twisted reality, manipulated time, and unleashed powers that threatened to unravel the very fabric of existence. But Gu Yangshan, fueled by the sacrifices of his comrades and the burning desire for true redemption, refused to break. He pushed past his limits, drawing upon a wellspring of power he never knew he possessed. In a moment of ultimate sacrifice, an ally, a true friend, made the ultimate choice, creating an opening, a fleeting window of opportunity. And in that moment, Gu Yangshan unleashed his final, devastating blow, a culmination of his entire journey, a testament to his unbroken will. The silence that followed the cataclysmic clash was deafening, broken only by the gentle whispers of the wind. The architect of fate, its grand design shattered, its power undone, vanished into the ether, leaving behind a world scarred but not broken. Gu Yangshan stood amidst the remnants of the battlefield, victorious, yet profoundly changed. The weight of his past, the burden of his sins, had finally been lifted. He had not merely rewritten history. He had redeemed himself, transforming from a villain consumed by regret into a true hero, a beacon of hope for a new era. The world, once teetering on the brink of annihilation, began its slow, arduous journey of recovery. Cities were rebuilt, lands were revitalized, and hope, a fragile seedling, began to blossom once more. Gu Yangshan, the man who had once been the embodiment of evil, was now hailed as a savior, a legend whispered in hushed tones of gratitude and admiration. He had not sought glory, nor had he desired power. He had simply sought to atone, to create a better world. And in doing so, he had achieved something far greater than he could have ever imagined. He had not just changed the past, he had changed the future. The ripples of his actions, once chaotic and unpredictable, now flowed with a gentle current, guiding the world towards a brighter, more harmonious destiny. He had found his redemption, not in erasing his past, but in embracing its lessons and forging a new path. His journey, fraught with peril and sacrifice, had culminated in a profound transformation, a testament to the enduring power of choice and the boundless potential for change. And so, the tale of Gu Yangshan, the villain who regressed to change everything, comes to a close. His story is a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, even for the most stained of souls, redemption is always within reach. It is a testament to the courage it takes to confront one's past, the strength required to forge a new path, and the unwavering belief in the possibility of a better future. He was a villain, yes, but in his regression, he became something far greater, a true hero, a legend whose legacy would echo through the ages, a symbol of hope and the enduring power of an unbroken will. If you were captivated by Gu Yangshan's incredible journey, be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more epic manhwa recaps and in-depth analyses. Your support helps us bring these amazing stories to life. Until next time, keep exploring the boundless worlds of manhwa.